Hello everyone and welcome to the first week of campCODE, our online summer coding program. My name is Julie and each week I'll be showing you a different project and coding concept, so by the end of these weeks you'll have all the skills necessary to make your own animated Scratch game. We'll be working in Scratch for all these weeks. For those that don't know, Scratch is a block-based coding language made by MIT for beginning coders. And this program itself is made for ages 9 to 14, but if you're a bit younger and confident in your skills, feel free to follow along as well. And if you're a bit more advanced with Scratch, then I do have some advanced challenges at the very end of my lessons to give, so you can give those a try. So let's get started, shall we? We'll first have to go to the website for Scratch, and that is scratch.mit.edu, and you can just type that in your browser. And I'll just have it open behind me right now. So if you don't have an account, I do recommend you making one. The benefits of having an account include being able to save and share your projects. And so if you want to do that, make sure to just click on the top right, Join Scratch button, make a username, password, and put in a valid email address. It's important to put a valid email address if you want to share projects because only verified accounts can share projects. If you have an account already, feel free to sign in. Or if you don't feel like making an account right now and you don't have an account already, we can always just start off without having to sign in at all. And that's what I'll be doing today. So on the top left, you'll see a Create button. So if you click on that, you'll be able to go to the Scratch Sandbox. And because you don't have an account, just know that you won't be able to save your projects automatically. You'll have to go into the file and click the Save to your computer and load it up every time you want to work on it again. So this here is the Scratch Sandbox. Behind me, you'll see the tutorial block. We don't need this at the moment, but if you want to watch this later, feel free to go to the tutorials at the very top of the page with a little light bulb icon, but right now I'll just be closing it. So on the left-hand side, you'll see all the code blocks, and these blocks are color coordinated based on what they do. So all these blue blocks are motion blocks, and they control motion of your animation. The looks blocks are purple and control how things look. Sound is pink, and so on and so on. Above me, you'll see a big blank area, and that is your coding area. So this is where you would drag your code blocks in order to code for some sprites that you're working with, or backdrops, or whatever else. So you just drag things in, they click to each other, and if you want to get rid of them, feel free to either right-click and delete the block, or just drag them right back into where they came from, and they'll just disappear. To the right-hand side, you'll see the preview area, and that is to see a preview of the code that you've been doing. In order to start the code, you can click on the green flag at the top, and to stop, you can click on the red stop sign. Scratch the Cat right now is our sprite that is being previewed, and a sprite is anything that moves or any characters that you'll be coding for. And along the bottom, you'll see all the sprite options. So all the sprite name, the position, the X and Y coordinates, the show and hide options, so you can show or hide the sprite, and also the size. So right now it's at 100%. I want to make it smaller, I can change it to 50, or if I want it bigger, I can change it to 200. Right there. Lastly, for the sprites, there is the directioning. So when I click on this direction here, it's at 90 degrees facing the right-hand side. If I want to rotate it any which way, I can do that as well. Or if you click underneath this little mirroring option, now when I click it to the other side, it will flip around. And that is the sprite options. You can also see the little sprite icon with the garbage can on the top of it. That is to delete the sprite, or if you want to add it, you can hover over this cat head with a plus sign, and you can choose a sprite from the Scratch library. You can paint your own, or you can even upload something like a photo or anything from the internet to use as a sprite as well. Lastly, we'll have the stages. So to the right beside the sprite area is the stage area. And right now our backdrop is just empty, it's white. So you can see the white backdrop. If you hover over the little icon below, you'll see that you can choose a backdrop from the Scratch library as well, or paint one or upload one, just like for your sprites. To start off, we'll be doing, for our first class, we'll be doing a baseball animation. So I'm going to get rid of Scratch the Cat by clicking on the garbage can above. Next, I'm going to set the stage for my baseball animation. So I'm going to choose a backdrop. Along the top, you can see that there is a sports area there, and I'm going to choose Baseball 1. So we have our baseball backdrop. Next, we're going to need some sprites to work with. So when I go to these choose a sprite area, you can see that there's a sports category here as well at the top. And I'm going to choose 3 of these. I'm going to choose the catcher, a batter, and a baseball. So I'm going to click on my catcher first. And you can see her appear in the preview area. Next, I'm going to do that again. Go to sports and click on my batter. And then lastly, I'll do that one more time with my baseball. And you can see in the preview area, all 3 of them show up, as well as in the sprite area, you can see all of their different icons show up, with the baseball one being highlighted currently, because that is the most recent one that we've chosen. So I'm going to drag all these to the positions I'd like them to start at. So I'd like the baseball to start at the very front down here. I'd like the catcher to go to the back over here. And I'd like my batter to stay in the box right over here. Next, we're going to have to start with the actual coding. So here's how we start with our animation. First of all, I have to figure out the order of things I want to happen. So what I want to happen is, first I want the baseball to go towards the 2 sprites. Second of all, I want my batter to swing her bat at the baseball. And third of all, I want the baseball to fly off to the left-hand side into the stands so that she can make a home run. So the first step of that was to make sure that the baseball is thrown towards the catcher and the batter. And how we do that is, first we will have to select our baseball sprite. And then you can see in the coding area at the top right, there's a little faded icon of the baseball, so we know that's where we're coding for. And in order to code for motion, we have to go to the motion blocks. We want to start our baseball at the bottom at this position where it's at currently. And you can see below the coordinates for that position are x is -5 and y is -169. And in our blocks in the motion area, you'll see the 5th block says go to x -5 and y -169. So I'm dragging that to our coding area. Next, I want the ball to glide or move to this position over here, right towards the batter and the catcher. And how I would do that is, you'll see, first of all, that the positions, the coordinates have changed in the sprite area here. X is now -4 and Y is 48. And you'll also see in the motion blocks that these automatically changed as well. So the go-to block now says X is -4 and Y is 48 instead of what it said before. But instead of using that block, we want the ball to glide. And you'll see below that block, there are 2 gliding options. The first one says glide 1 second to random position, which we don't want. And the next one says glide 1 second to this new position, which we do want. So I'm going to grab this and slide it underneath that first block that we put down. And so now we want to preview our animation. And how we do that is we have to code for the event that makes the code start. And that is by clicking the green arrow. So when we go into our event blocks on the left-hand side, the yellow blocks, the first block you'll see is the when green flag is clicked block. So I'm going to drag this and put it on top of our code so that right now our code says when the green flag is clicked, I will start at the bottom position here, and then I will glide to the second position where all the batter and the catchers are. So if I push the green flag now, you'll see that's exactly what happens, which is perfect. You'll also see that the baseball is a little bit big for my liking. So in my sprite area, I'm going to change the size to half that size at 50%. So when I push my green flag, That looks pretty good to me. So, next step, we want our batter to swing her bat at the ball. And what that means is we need her to change her costumes. So, when we click on the batter, first of all, you'll notice that in the coding area, all of our code for the baseball is gone because now we're coding for the batter. And also, you'll notice at the top of the screen underneath the toolbar, there is 3 tabs for the code, costumes, and also sounds. So costumes is where we want to go. And you'll see along the left-hand side that the batter, which comes preloaded on Scratch, has 4 different costumes preloaded with her. And the first one is the one we saw initially. The second one is her winding up. The third one is her swinging the bat. And lastly is her following through. So we want the batter to go through all of these actions while the ball is being thrown. And how we do that is, first of all, we go back to the code. And since we have the events tabs already open, we have to make sure that the code runs when the green flag is clicked. So I'm going to put that block at the very top again. And then we'll have to go to the looks blocks to change how she looks. So you'll see in the 5th option down here, there's a block that says switch costume to batter D. And batter D was the last costume that we saw, but we want to start with batter A. So I'm switching that in the drop-down list, grabbing that block and putting it underneath the first event block. Next, I want her to switch to the next costume, so I'm switching that to batter B and putting that block in next. Next, we want the batter C, where she's swinging the bat. We'll put that underneath. And lastly, we want batter D, the follow through, and we'll put that at the very end. So in theory, when I click on this green flag, the baseball should come flying towards the batter and the catcher, and the batter should be going through all of these costume changes to hit the ball. So when I push the green flag, you'll see that unfortunately it did not work, and I'll tell you why. Right now, for the batter, we have her coded so that she changes her costume 4 times, but because we didn't put any control between any of these 4 costume changes, they all happen at the same time, and because code reads from the top down and batter D is the last costume that we have, she just ends up being on batter D's costume the whole time. And what we need to do in order to change this is to add some control. So in the control blocks on the left-hand side, the orange blocks, you'll see the first block is the wait 1 second. I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it between each of these costume changes so that each time she changes her costume, she will wait 1 second before changing to the next costume. And now when I push the green flag, you'll see that she is swinging her bat, but she is swinging it a bit too slowly to hit the ball. So you can also notice that the 1 over here is in an area where you can change the text. So I'm going to change it to 0.5 seconds, so half of a second. And I'm going to do that for all 3 of them. And there we are. So when I push the green flag, you'll see that she swings the bat right when the baseball gets to her. And I am going to move the baseball a little further up so she actually does hit the ball. And I'm going to replace this glide with the new coordinates and get rid of this old one. So that when I push the green flag, she hits it right on instead of a bit too low. And next step, we want the ball to go flying when she hits it. So that's our final step in our animation, at least in the motion section. So right now for our baseball, we have it starting off at the bottom, gliding towards the 2 sprites, and now we want it to fly off, maybe to the left-hand side, off into the stands for a home run. So I've moved our baseball to where I want it to end up flying towards. And what I need to do now is have it glide towards that new coordinate. So I'm back into my motion blocks, down again to the glide 1 second to this new position, and I'll put it right down there so that when I push this green flag, you have it flying off once it gets hit. So that's our main animation. Now we're gonna have to jazz it up a little bit. So when the baseball gets hit and it flies off, I want it to disappear. And how I would do that is, remember the show hide that we had previously? We can code for that. So going into my looks blocks, I'm going to scroll down and you can see that there is a show and there's a hide block. We're going to take the block for hiding and we're going to put it at the very end of our baseball code so that when I push this green flag again, you'll see that at the end the baseball flies out and disappears because of our hide block that we added at the very end. But also there is a slight issue with this. So when I push this green flag again to replay the animation, you'll see that you don't see the baseball. And that is because it's still hidden from the last time we ran the code. So what we need to do to make sure that it shows up every single time again is to put the show block at the very top so that when the green flag is clicked, it knows to show itself each time it's clicked. So now we'll try it again. And that looks pretty good. We're also going to add to this animation a little bit of sound. So for the baseball, I want the baseball to make a sound when it gets hit. And then at the end, when it flies off, I want to hear a cheer. So how I would do that is along the top of the page here, you'll see that there are 3 tabs. One of them is the code tab that we're in. Next is the costumes that we used previously to change the costumes for the batter. And last we have the sounds option here. So I'm going to click on the sounds. And you'll see for the baseball, we currently have 1 sound associated with it. And it sounds like this. So it's just a little pop sound. But I think we can do a little bit better for the sound of it being hit. So I'm going to go down here to the choose a sound option on the left bottom. And Scratch has a small sound library as well that I'd like to take a look through. I'm going to click on the add a sound, and then along the top there is another sports category, which is perfect. And then you can preview these sounds by hovering over the violet play button on top. So you hear all these different sports sounds. I think the best sound for the baseball being hit would probably be this tennis hit sound because there's no specific baseball hit sound. So if I want to select this sound, I will click on it. On my left hand side, you'll see that it is now added to my list of sounds. And when I go back to my code and scroll down to the sounds area, you'll see that I have the option to play sound tennis hit until done, or start sound tennis hit. And the difference between these 2 options is that the first one, the play until done, makes it so that you're playing your sound and no other code can happen until that sound is done playing. The second one has it so that you can start the sound and other code will play as well while that sound is still playing. So what I want to use is the second one, so the start sound tennis hit. And I want to know where I should put that. So where is it that the ball is getting hit and flying off? It's right between the 2 glides. So first one glides it towards the 2 other sprites, and then you want that sound to happen right here, and then it'll glide off into the stands. So when I push this flag button right here, you can see that it coordinates pretty well. Just be aware that there might be a slight lag in my video recording, so I will be adding a link to see all these animations and the code inside of them later on at the very end of this lesson. So there's my first sound. I've added the tennis hit or the baseball hit technically sound to when the ball gets hit. The next one I want to add is the cheering sound at the very end when it gets thrown out into the stands. So I need to go back into my sounds tab, and I need to add a cheering sound at the very end. So I'm going to go back down to the bottom to choose a sound. I'm going to go back to the sports category. And there are two cheer sounds here. There is this one, and there's a goal cheer as well. It doesn't matter which one you choose, but I'll be choosing the goal cheer for today. So I'm going to click on that. It's going to be added to my list on the left. And so when I go back to my code, I can have all three of those sounds available in my, my code to play. So I want to play the goal cheer until done at the very end of my animation. So when I click on this flag, there's a cheer at the very end. You can hear the baseball being hit, so that's perfect. Last of all, very last thing, when the ball is hit and she makes the home run, I want the batter to say home run. So how I would do that is I'm going to click on the batter so I can see her code, and then I'm going to go into the looks blocks. And the first block says say hello for 2 seconds. And I want her to say home run. So I'm going to change that text to home run, exclamation mark. And I'm going to drag that block that I just altered to the very end of her code so that when I play, after she hits the ball and it goes off, she says home run for 2 seconds. Sorry again if there's any slight delays in it. And that is our animation for today. So please feel free to make your own animations about your favorite sports. There are quite a few backdrops and sprites available already in Scratch, but if you need to upload your own, please feel free to do that as well. I'd love to see them. So I will now share my profile that I promised you before to see all of these animations and how they are programmed, or how I programmed them. So here is my Scratch page. My username is APL_Julie, and the website for my profile link is my profile link is scratch.mit.edu/users/APL_Julie. And I'll also provide this in the description so it'll be a little bit more easy to access. Last of all, I will be doing the advanced challenge for those that are a bit more experienced in Scratch. And you'll see here in my profile there is Scratch Lesson 1.5, and that will be our advanced challenge for today. And so here's the animation for our advanced challenge. You'll see that the first part of the challenge, or the first part of the animation, I kept, but I also added a second stage so that there are two different parts of the animation. The first part where she's hitting the ball, and then the second part where she's running around the diamond on her new backdrop. You can also click on the See Inside buttons to see any of my code and also notes I made. For our advanced lesson, I added a second backdrop, Baseball 2, as a second part to the first animation we made. Second of all, I changed the batter's costume to a running one, so I added my own costume by copying and editing one of the current costumes that she already has. Third, I added more sprites to the baseball diamond as the batter runs around the bases. I added the pitcher and outfielder. Fourth, I hid the catcher and the baseball sprites as it turns to the second backdrop, and then when it changes to the second backdrop, I showed them in new positions. And fifth, I added broadcasting blocks to change the background. So this is the hardest part and will require you to know how broadcasting blocks work, which we will discuss in later lessons if you're confused or don't know how to do this at the moment. And that's it for today's lesson. I hope you spend a bit more time playing around in Scratch and don't be afraid of clicking around to see what things do. I'll see you next week.